Okay, so today I'm going to talk to you a little bit more about the vestibular system. So we're going to go through a little bit of the anatomy first to give you a better idea of what is actually going on in the vestibular system. It's a very complex system that involves many structures, as you can see. So I won't go into detail about how exactly every single one of these structures works because there truly are so many components that could be discussed all day long. The primary thing that you need to know is the vestibular system is made up of little structures in our inner ear called semicircular canals. And you can see those on that left image. These are basically like little tubes in your ears that are situated in different planes. So there's the transverse plane, the sagittal plane, and the frontal plane. And that detects the way that your head is moving. So if you're nodding up and down, that's a different plane than if you're turning your head from side to side or tilting your head in a diagonal motion. These canals are filled with fluid called endolymph that flows into the ampulla, which is pictured a little bit better there on the right. So what happens is these structures contain sensory organs such as tiny hair cells and the cupula here that act as sensory receptors of the vestibular system. And the cupula is just a gelatinous structure that covers those hair cells. So when the endolymph distorts the cupula, it causes the hair cells to move, which stimulate one of our cranial nerves, the vestibulocochlear nerve. And this nerve tells our brain that our head is moving in space. And so what all of that is doing is giving you all that vestibular input that you need to be balanced, to be coordinated, etc. So if a child is hypersensitive to vestibular input, they may present like being very afraid of swings and spinning. They may not like to jump or run or do a lot of movement, so they can actually appear kind of lethargic. They might not participate in playground activities with other kids because they're just so sensitive to that vestibular input that they can't handle it. They also could have low muscle tone. If a child has hyposensitivity to vestibular input, it means that they're not sensitive enough to that sensory stimuli. So these kids might always be moving around. They may not be able to sit still. They might enjoy activities like spinning around in circles, jumping, bouncing. I've seen kids, like hang off of furniture and tilt their head upside down so that they can get that kind of input that they need. They tend to not get as dizzy. So a kid could be going forever and ever and ever on a merry-go-round and just will not get dizzy. So they also may have some difficulty with balance and coordination because of this, because that vestibular system is not processing, okay, I'm tilting in this plane and I actually need to catch myself and catch my balance. So the kids may trip a little bit more often as well or stumble, and those are some common things that you will see in a child who has hyposensitivity to vestibular input. Vision really can also be affected by vestibular processing systems as well. That's a whole other conversation in and of itself. And often a child might need interventions for both because they are so closely related. So now I'm going to go through a few interventions you can do with your child at home to address some vestibular processing difficulties and hopefully help regulate that system a little bit. So the intervention that Alexa and I are doing here is I'm just going to twist her around in a rotary motion on a swing. You can do this pretty much on any swing at any playground, and it'll present the same effect. This is a pretty intense intervention. Some children love it, but if a child is hypersensitive, it can definitely make him or her feel pretty sick. So I would caution to go really slow with that intervention if your child is sensitive to vestibular input. Another intervention you can do that I'm doing with Alexa here is you can just swing the child gently back and forth. And this can be a lot calmer and a lot less stimulating than that rotary motion. Linear motions actually help calm the body down, whereas those rotary motions can stimulate your body and make you feel more alert and maybe hyperactive. If you don't have a swing at home or nearby, you can also just spin your child in a rotary motion like I am spinning here. You'll get basically the same effect and it's still going to target that vestibular system, whether the child is hypo or hypersensitive to the input. Another thing that you can do is jumping jacks with your child. As you can see, my head is moving around a lot, so this is giving me a lot of that vestibular feedback that I need in order to balance while I'm jumping. The next activity that we're going to do here is Alexa and I are just going to make a blanket swing. So you can really easily do this with a large blanket that you have at home or a big sheet like we're doing. We just put a squirrel in here for emphasis of putting the child in the blanket. You can swing it back and forth just like this. It gives us a very nice soothing vestibular input for the child and can be used daily if a child is not getting enough sensory input that they need. Another great activity you can do with your kids is just doing some yoga. As you can see, our heads are tilting in different planes, and we're kind of having to balance our body with our muscles working simultaneously with that vestibulo-ocular response to position our bodies in space. So this is a really great activity for kids to regulate their vestibular systems as well, and it also addresses proprioception on top of it. Another activity to help regulate the vestibular system to help with balance is just kind of hopping across some uneven surfaces. So we have these fun balls that kids can walk on at the clinic, but if you just have some cushions that provide an uneven surface, this will work just as well. Now for a fun part. So for some of those kids who love to get more sensory input, doing some stuff like somersault is a great way to stimulate that vestibular system and give them the input that they need. As you can see, my head is moving quite a lot here, so I'm getting a lot of that endolymph movement going on. Finally, the last thing that you can try with your kids is they can hang off of some monkey bars or trapeze at a playground, or they can hang their heads off of furniture as long as it is safe. As always, please contact your physician before you complete any of these activities with your child in the case that there is some kind of underlying condition in which these activities may not be safe. If you have any questions, you can ask your occupational therapist. And as always, go ahead and like and subscribe.